I do want to welcome in our next guest, DraftKings up 2% today. Brett Sifling with Gerber, Kawasaki Wealth and Investment Management. Brett, thanks so much for coming on. What are your thoughts on this differing guidance, mixed messages that we're getting from the sports betting world?
It's certainly interesting because, it's really driven by the digitalization and also the legalization of sports betting. And so you're seeing companies like Penn, who has that drag of the casinos in person, have a lot different guidance than someone like DraftKings, who has completely gone digital and looking at, 30% growth in paying customers, as well as a 30% growth in the revenue that they're extracting per customer. So these companies have had a lot of capital expenditures up front, and it's starting to slowly pay off for them as we, see these reports come out.
Okay, so it's clear that digital is important, obviously marketing important as well. What do we know about customer acquisition, Brett, that might put a company like DraftKings in a better position?
It's clear that young people want to bet on their phones, and they would rather do that than go into the sports book. It's not necessarily a huge different experience by turning your ticket in the ring. And so I think that, Barstool with Penn obviously has a huge influence on the younger people, but with sports returning to the stadiums, I think is the most important part, because with sports returning, you're having these leagues actually embrace sports betting for the first time. You look at the TV screen, you have the lines of the games up there. You can bet on individual players, and the announcers are even, talking about these bets in the game. So I think that embrace is really driving it across the society.
Now, in terms of the NFL, I know that at least for DraftKings, right, is the money maker. It's where we see the most bets waged, the Super Bowl, a big event as well, even more so than major sporting events like the Olympics per se, as we've learned in the past. Any expectations, Brett, as to what this NFL season might hold?
I think that it's probably going to be one of the best seasons. I mean, sports are back, right? People have this pent-up demand to not only just go to the games, but also bet on the sports, because it is such a cheap way of having entertainment. I do have a little bit of worries from the recessionary side of this. If people do have less disposable income, that might influence their sports betting habits. And so we'll kind of see how that rolls out over the next quarter or two, especially as we get into football season.
Okay. The economy slowing down a bit, but we're starting to see a turnaround in the stock market. The expectation is that the consumer price data is going to come down a little bit, potentially after peaking in June when we get that July report this week as well. And the jobs market still is holding up. Brett, any indication as to how the economy, overall economic sentiment and performance actually impacts this sector?
I think it will in the short term. Again, if people don't have as much money at the end of the month, they might, think twice about putting that bet in. But really, I think the story here is, as states legalize this over the next 3 to 5 years, it's going to be a great driving force. Like, I live in California here in Los Angeles. I can't even place a sports bet on my phone, where most, a lot of the other states can. And so, there's actually a bill that's upcoming here in November in California that might change that. And that would, along with 2 other states, bring up close to about 40 million participants into that ecosystem. So when you look at that versus maybe a slight slowdown in consumer spending, I think that story has a lot greater footing.
So, Brett, it sounds like you do see clear winners, outperformers showing off, obviously, in this industry, with football season upon us, set to kick off soon. More dollars going to these sports betting venues, whether it's digital or actually the sports betting book itself. Do you think we might see some consolidation in this space? What business activity could be in the future?
Whenever there's, a sell-off in these stocks, especially the growth stocks like we've just seen, there's always a chance that a competitor, maybe like MGM, who has their Bet MGM app, or someone who's very well capitalized that wants to get into the space, scoop someone smaller up. It's not necessarily something that we want to bet on. We kind of like having our few companies that we own. Specifically, MGM is our favorite here, with their refresh coming later in the year. But acquisitions are definitely possible in this public equity market that's sold off quite a bit.
I'm just curious. I mean, we've been discussing for a while now, Brett, how popular football is among some of these sports betting apps and venues. What do you think it's going to take for other leagues or other athletes to actually get some traction on some of these platforms?
I think as the states continue to legalize it, it's going to become more common. Now, with that being said, we have to remember that sports betting is extremely addictive, right? And it could be detrimental to a lot of people's lives. And so, if we don't see proper regulation and we don't see the proper oversight for these leagues, then ultimately we could see states kind of rolling that back. And so I do think that that's a huge risk. But if they do it the right way, I think that leagues will become, more accepting of, the entertainment that it provides because it's a lot of fun. And at the end of the day, that's what sports are all about is making sure that you have fun and you're entertained.
All right, Brett Sifling with Gerber, Kawasaki, Wealth and Investment Management. Brett, thanks so much for coming on.